The doorbell rang precisely at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. I wasn't expecting any, especially not that early, so I assumed it might be a package delivery. Instead, I opened the door to find a middle-aged woman with highlighted blonde hair and the unmistakable "Can I speak to your manager?" style. She clutched a clipboard like it contained classified information. Before I could even greet her, she looked me up and down with narrowed, judgmental eyes. "You don't belong here," she declared, her voice heavy with unearned authority. She tapped her pen against the clipboard. "This is a respectable neighborhood with standards. I need to see proof of ownership immediately." Still half asleep and thoroughly confused, I blinked. "Excuse me, who are you?" "I'm Karen Wilson, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association," she said with exaggerated pride, emphasizing every word of her title as if announcing royalty. "And you are clearly too young to own property in this development. Our covenants are very specific about maintaining the character of our community." I began to explain that I had just moved in last week, but she cut me off. "Save it. I've already filed eviction paperwork. You have 30 days to vacate the premises before legal action is taken." She shoved a paper into my hands. "Consider this your official notice." I stood there, stunned and speechless. She turned on her heel, but paused just long enough to deliver a final jab. "Next time, do your research before squatting in someone else's neighborhood." What Karen didn't know, or what she couldn't possibly have imagined, was that not only did I legally own this house, but I paid for it entirely in cash. Her false accusations weren't just obnoxious, they bordered on criminal. I closed the door, leaning against it as the paper trembled in my hand. This wasn't how I'd pictured my journey into homeownership. My name is Jason, and at 26, I had just achieved what many people dream of. I bought my first home, debt-free. It hadn't come easy. After graduating college, I lived with my parents for 4 years, working remotely as a software developer. I saved every penny, invested wisely, and lived far below my means. When a modest 3-bedroom in Meadowbrook Estates came on the market at a surprisingly reasonable price, thanks to some outdated interior design, I jumped on the opportunity. The previous owner, an elderly man, had moved into assisted living, and his family was eager for a quick, no-hassle sale. My all-cash offer was exactly what they needed. No financing delays, no contingencies, just a clean, straightforward transaction. Within 30 days, I had the keys and the deed of both in my name. But instead of being welcomed by new neighbors, I was met with suspicious glances and quiet whispers. Karen, it seemed, had made herself the self-appointed gatekeeper of the community. And in her eyes, a single 20-something man didn't fit the mold of a proper Meadowbrook resident. From the moment the moving truck arrived, I noticed her watching me from across the street, snapping photos with her phone and shaking her head in disapproval. I tried to ignore it. I had bigger concerns, like tearing down the floral wallpaper in the kitchen and replacing the avocado green bathroom fixtures. I figured Karen would calm down once she realized I was a quiet, respectful homeowner who kept to himself. I was wrong. The passive-aggressive campaign began just 3 days after I moved in. First came the note Tessa printed on what looked like official whole letterhead about my garbage cans being visible from the street. They weren't. Then another one about my lawn needing immediate attention. It had been freshly mowed the day before. Next were the slow, deliberate drive-bys. Karen would cruise past my house in her white SUV, glaring and snapping photos of anything she considered an infraction. One note read, "Your holiday decorations must be approved by the committee." I hadn't even put up decorations. Another read, "Overnight street parking is prohibited." My car was parked inside my garage. Then the gossip started. Karen began telling neighbors I must be involved in something shady. I overheard her whispering to an elderly couple walking their dog past my driveway, "There's no way someone his age could afford that house. He's probably dealing drugs or running a gambling ring." I've already contacted the authorities to investigate. 2 weeks after her first visit, a manila envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a formal notice of non-compliance. The notice claimed I was in violation of HOA bylaws due to minimum age requirements for homeowners. According to the document, Meadowbrook Estates was designated a 55-plus community, and I had 30 days to vacate the property or face legal action. It was completely absurd. I had reviewed every HOA document before purchasing the house. There was no mention of an age restriction. Meadowbrook wasn't a retirement community. It was a typical suburban neighborhood. I immediately called my real estate attorney, who confirmed what I already knew. Karen was making it up. Document everything, my attorney advised. If she's filing false claims, it's not just harassment, it could be fraud. That same evening, I installed security cameras around the exterior of my home. If Karen wanted a war, I'd be ready for it. 3 days later, things escalated. Karen showed up at my door again, this time flanked by 2 other HOA board members. One was my neighbor from 2 doors down, who at least had the decency to look visibly uncomfortable. "We're here for a compliance inspection," Karen announced, trying to push past me into the foyer. I blocked the entrance. "You'll need an appointment and proper authorization for that." Her face flushed red. "As HOA president, I have every right. You have the right to enforce legitimate bylaws through proper procedures," I interrupted, keeping my voice steady. "What you don't have is the right to enter my private property without permission or invent rules that don't exist." I pulled out my phone and opened a PDF. "Here's the full HOA covenant. Please, show me where it says there's an age restriction on homeowners." The neighbor beside her looked suddenly skeptical. "I've lived here for 15 years, Karen. There's no age restriction." Karen's nostrils flared. "New amendment passed last month. Amendments require a 2/3 majority vote from all homeowners," I replied. "I never received a ballot or any notification of such a vote." I turned to the other board members. "Did either of you?" Their silence spoke volumes. "I'm going to have to ask you all to leave my property," I said firmly. "Any future communication should be in writing and based on actual HOA regulations." I held up my phone. "And just so you're aware, this entire exchange has been recorded, audio and video." Karen's face twisted with fury, but she turned and stormed off, practically dragging her bewildered companions with her. As she retreated down the walkway, I heard her hiss, "This isn't over." She was right, but not in the way she meant. The next morning, I found a notice taped to my front door. My stomach dropped. It looked like an official county eviction order. Heart pounding, I examined it closely, then called the county clerk's office. The document was fake, filed under Karen's name with forged credentials. It falsely claimed she had legal authority to evict residents. The clerk was immediately alarmed and transferred me to the county prosecutor's office. This wasn't just an annoying neighbor dispute anymore. Karen had crossed into criminal territory. This had gone beyond petty neighborhood drama. I wasn't about to let it slide. I compiled all my evidence, the fabricated HOA violations, security footage of Karen trespassing on my property, the forged eviction notice, and emails from other neighbors who had faced similar harassment. The county prosecutor was especially interested in the falsified legal documents. Impersonating a public official and filing fraudulent documents are serious crimes, she explained. "We take this very seriously." Within days, a formal investigation was launched. What they uncovered shocked even me. Karen had been treating the HOA like her personal fiefdom for years. She created bogus rules, imposed unauthorized fines, and diverted HOA funds for her own use. Board meetings were rare and irregular, minutes were often fabricated, and several homeowners had been bullied into compliance with threats of eviction. A warrant was issued to search Karen's home office. Police found detailed folders on nearly every resident, documents filled with personal information she had no right to possess. They also discovered templates for forged legal notices and eviction orders. Her computer revealed a disturbing trail: forged signatures of other board members, fake financial reports, and evidence of years of embezzlement. 2 weeks after I'd contacted the county, I was working from home when I heard a commotion outside. I looked out my window to see 2 officers escorting Karen out of the HOA fascia in handcuffs. Her face was a picture of outrage. Neighbors emerged from their homes, watching silently as the woman who had ruled the neighborhood through fear was finally held accountable. "This is ridiculous," she screamed, her voice echoing down the street. "I was protecting our community from outsiders and freeloaders. Just what property values will crash without me." No one said a word in her defense. The silence was broken only by the sound of slow, Deliberate applause from a few front porches. Karen was charged with multiple counts: fraud, forgery, impersonating a public official, harassment, and embezzlement of HOA funds. Her bail was set at $50,000, which she couldn't pay. It turned out she'd spent most of her savings sustaining the illusion of wealth and power she used to intimidate others. At the final home meeting I attended, I expected tension, maybe even confrontation. Instead, I was greeted with warmth and even a few apologies. "We should have stood up to her sooner," one neighbor admitted. The interim HOA president, a retired judge who lived down the street, approached me after the meeting. "Would you consider joining the board?" he asked. "We could use someone with your eye for detail and understanding of the regulations. We want to make sure something like this never happens again." As the meeting wrapped up, the judge pulled me aside and said something that made everything click. "You know," he said with a chuckle, "there's something poetic about all of this. That house you bought, Karen tried to buy it 5 years ago. Her mortgage was denied. She never got over it." I stood there in stunned silence as the truth settled in. The woman who had tried to force me out, who had made my life miserable, was driven by one thing: jealousy. She had wanted this house, and when she couldn't have it, she tried to destroy anyone else who did. Karen was eventually sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraud and embezzlement. She was also ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution to the HOA. When the sentence was read, the polished persona she had maintained for years finally cracked. "This is absurd," she shrieked in the courtroom. "I was just maintaining standards. This neighborhood will fall apart without me." The judge calmly added a contempt of court charge. As she was led out in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence, it was finally clear: Karen wasn't the protector of the neighborhood she pretended to be. She was its biggest threat.